All right, thanks, Ashley. Let's get you updated now on really the biggest story we've been following for a long time, and certainly overnight from Capitol Hill. Congressional leaders finally have reached a deal on the debt ceiling, and that will avoid a default. The deal includes more than $2 trillion in spending cuts, gradually imposed over the next decade, with the hope that it's not a drag on the economy. There will be no initial cuts to programs like Social Security and Medicare, but both could be on the table along with changes in laws as we look at future cuts. So now congressional leaders have to convince colleagues to pass the agreement before the deadline. We're joined in studio by Congressman Hanson Clark. Thank you for coming in to join us. And on the phone, Congressman Thaddeus McCotter. Thank you for joining us as well.
Thanks for having me.
He's there with us. All right, let me start with you, Hanson. My first question was going to be, are you going to vote for it? But I guess first, you guys have to read it. It's been in the leadership. Now, how big is it, and how quickly do you have to absorb it all?
Well, you know, for me, any legislation as complex and as important as this, I got to read it, every page, every line, because in spite of what the promises that are being made about it, there could be loopholes in here, loopholes that could actually undercut Metro Detroiters' right to receive their Social Security checks. That could be a problem. But on balance, from what I heard, I would likely vote for this because by avoiding government default, people are going to be able to receive their Social Security checks, and that's very important to our senior citizens. Sure. However, the one true debt that's really burdening Metro Detroiters is not being cut in this deal, and that's folks' mortgages, their student loans, their credit cards. That's the debt that's really crushing our viewers, and if we reduce that debt, that'll free up the purchasing power of all Americans, and that's how you create jobs. So that real debt, the debt that Americans have to pay, that Metro Detroiters are burdened with their underwater mortgages, the student loans that are going to take them an adult lifetime to repay, the credit card charges that could be as high as 30%, while the federal government still only borrows long-term at less than 3%, showing that there's still confidence in the American economy. But it's Metro Detroiters' own finances that are really being hurt. Oh, sure. Their debt needs to be cut.
Congressman McCotter, same question to you. Are you comfortable with what you know about it now, that you can vote for this, or do you need to explore it a little further?
Well, I need to read it. I'm very concerned about it. Obviously, right off the bat, we know that what's the economy is big government, and you have a deal that immediately increases the debt ceiling for a year to about $2 trillion if it's done the way it's supposed to be executed, in exchange for cuts of the same amount over 10 years. Now, that's not a particularly good deal for taxpayers. Secondly, the sequestration elements of this and the commission that is going to be set up that has to report back before November and then be approved before December leave potential, in my mind, for a diminishment of national security, which I think would be unacceptable, especially in a time of war.
You know, Congressman McCotter, as a follow-up to that, I watched this as an outsider, like so many millions of Americans, and our reaction in large part was, so much politics. Can't we stop with the politics and just settle something? Was there too much politics in this debate in Washington?
I think you're always going to see that. This was very reminiscent to people like myself who were here during the TARP debates, where you had individuals on both sides that were very passionate about the issue. But this is democracy. This is what happens when we have a divided Congress, and that is what the people elected to send here. The president was elected. He's still in his term. And so I think that on the other side of it is you wanted to make sure they tried to come to an agreement. They have at least come to that between the leaderships.
Yeah. You know, there is a strong disagreement on both sides of the spectrum, which tends to mean usually that it's a good deal because everybody's mad on both sides. Is this a fair compromise as you understand it at this point?
Well, the question
well, you know, it could be. However, we need to look at giving tax breaks to small businesses like my orthodontist so they can hire more people. We don't need to continue to give these big breaks to hedge fund managers and big oil companies. But what's so important, though, it's cutting the debt that Metro Detroiters have to pay on their mortgage, on their student loans, on their credit card charges, because Congress is in part responsible for the enormous debt that we're in right now because they changed the rules.
And that's the debt that means something to people.
That's the debt that really means. So if you cut back on debt, they'll have more money to spend. That's how you create more jobs, and that's how you really turn the economy around in a sustainable way.
And very quickly, before I get another reaction from Congressman McCotter, you think this will pass?
Yes. I do.
Congressman McCotter, you think this is going to pass and we're going to be done with this before the deadline?
I think something's going to get done before the deadline. Whether it's exactly this or not, I don't know. But to your last point, really quickly, Steve, just because people on both sides oppose something doesn't mean the people on both sides who agree on it are right. And I cite the Wall Street bailout.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Congressman McCotter, thank you so much for taking time with us this morning.
Thanks.
And
it's great
Congressman
being
Clark,
with you.
thank you. You got to get back to Washington right away.
I'm flying right now.